Hello. Hello. A little bit off with my timing there. I started the stream before the countdown had finished, but I'm excited to get started. Excited and anxious, a little bit of both. Alright, so let's get the coffee out of frame. Slide my phone out of the way. It's so strange having the desk space still in this weird place of everything's changing. So right now, you'll notice you don't have a great view of Wonderland. That's because I had the whole piece slid towards me, so I can go ahead and sketch as much as I could get done before we have camera rolling. And now that we do, it's about time to get started. I will go ahead and get some of this coffee out of the way. Alright. So I hope that you've all had a great weekend. It was nice to take a day off of the stream to just focus on some other things that I've had sitting aside. A lot of projects, a lot of other work. So it's been interesting. And I'm going to go ahead and get our little swatch strip off to the side here, as well as slide everything up and go ahead and get the camera focused. So right now the silhouette for the white rabbit is a little bit darker than I would usually like, but I'm still sketching in details, and then I'll go ahead and knock back the graphite lens as usual. Just to give you a quick tour of what's going on in Wonderland so far. We have the quote-unquote real world with the rabbit hole here. Big tree with roots hanging down into the rabbit hole. I thought that would be an interesting view. And from there we have kind of an abstract keyhole going on. I did already knock back the lines for this, so that's why that's appearing pretty light. And you'll have to forgive me for the warm cast on the light. I have not gotten the whole warranty process nailed down, so I'm just going to be filing for a warranty replacement on that light because the cool version of the lighting is excessively dim. It is nowhere near as bright as this. And rather than keep making adjustments to the camera, the problem's really the light, so we're kind of an in-between there. Anyway, so yeah, through the abstract keyhole, you're kind of seeing a view of the initial hallway that Alice had landed in. And then we have the key, the potion bottle. The potion bottle is going to get a tag. The placement for that is still a little bit up in the air because I have to fit the Tweedles and the talking flowers in. The dodo is going to have plenty of room back here to be put in. Let's see who else. The Cheshire Cat is still a work in progress. I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and pop him in probably behind the signpost, because I did start drawing a stump of a tree. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on the rest of the tree. This will push the woods further into the background, and it'll allow the Cheshire Cat to be a little bit more front and center in this composition, because I kind of feel bad having some of these like classic characters that would be probably exciting for somebody having a sticker set of being tiny. I don't mind the card guard being tiny. He's sporting. We want more of the main characters up front. I still have to put on the faces for the Mad Hatter and Alice. I don't know why. I just have not worked my way back over there. Actually, since we're running around with pencil right now, I'm going to erase the pencil lines on this fork, because I went ahead and I did paint in the tines, just seeing how that looks compared to the mess of pencil. Let's see what else. We have forest back here going from like deciduous to like enoki style mushrooms. There's some birch trees and whatnot in between to go ahead and help give us some depth to the setting. We also have a checkerboard here, or I should say chessboard, but a checkerboard pattern with our Jabberwock. That was the creature that I chose to use for this prompt. We had literally the prompt was creature a couple days ago. We have the queen, we have our frog footman, who's missing a head because he wasn't the focus of that prompt. We were just giving the flamingo a place to be, and this will be the croquet court behind them. So lots of nice greenery. We'll have some roses down here in the corner. So those are kind of blocked out with a couple circles for some of the blooms. The vine will still be growing up next to the frog footman. I'll squeeze in another rose here. I'm going to be adjusting that just because I moved him closer to the foreground instead of to the background. This area was kind of sparse, so I felt like he would have decent placement. And I can go ahead and just slightly stretch the vine up this way, but have more of the flowers cascading out this way. Let's see what else. We have the executioner's area. This probably needs another detail for some wash, just to give the face a little bit more definition and maybe a glint off the axe to add that ominous tone, just like the this hat sitting here with no owner. We have the white rabbit, so he is currently just an outline. And my camera is telling me it's at low battery now. I'm gonna let it go for a couple moments because it will go ahead and beep. So if there is a interruption in the stream, it's going to be a very quick one. I keep a backup right here, so I'm just ready to pop that out and swap them. And hopefully my mic's been in a decent spot, because apparently I knocked it over a little bit and probably been talking gibberish. Just a bit of gibberish. So I've started to relax a little bit on doing the tour of Wonderland. because I feel like for everyone who's joined me every day through these prompts, it's probably a little bit tedious since we're on day 18 now. But at the same time, I also want to help out anybody new, so you have an idea of like what's coming in Wonderland. Basically, once I figure out where these Tweedles and the talking flowers are, and go ahead and pencil in the March hare, a lot more color is coming to this background. The idea is that I'm going to either apply masking fluid or just little strips of paper to go ahead and protect faces, so I can go ahead and wet the background and drop in some pretty dramatic color. So I feel like part of Wonderland needs a little bit more of that abstract, colorful nature, and then I can go ahead and start blocking in what I want to do with the background. If this was only to be a sticker sheet, I would probably just do line work in the background, and that way all the stickers really pop from the surface. But because this is a combination, like I at least for the concept, that it will be both a print as well as stickers, I want to make sure that it works well for both. I'm seeing little stray eraser bits and whatnot back here. Eraser bits and fuzzies, we don't want those. Alright. So, now enough of my yammering. Let's get this bunny dressed, and I have to put his other arm in still. And then I have a big ol' bit of eraser there. Alright. So, I'm going to do what I can to bring the camera down here a little bit. And we're gonna zoom in just a touch. And I'm still with the same playlist that I was using yesterday. I'm kind of on the fence, so I'm looking for something else right now. So hopefully you enjoy. Alright, so we have a pocket watch, and then we need another arm. Weird thing about the dimensions of a rabbit versus the dimensions of a person. Paws would be so much closer this way, but I feel like that makes this a awkward looking waistcoat. Let's do an arm over here. That's about where it would attach to the body. But he's not doing anything too active with this arm. So you can kind of see where I was getting stuck, because it's not easy to dress a rabbit, apparently. We'll go in with the top edge of the waistcoat. You know what? I'm gonna knock this arm down just a little bit so I have an idea as far as placement, but that it's not getting in the way of getting this rabbit dressed. I'm thinking I'll go with the kind of overturned cuff effect. Not cuff, collar effect that some vests have. You have that nice little satiny panel. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and move ahead on this this track, because that's the only thing I don't like, is a couple tracks go like cheesy Halloween. I'm thinking like very like Disney Haunted Mansion type of thing, and like, that's not what I'm feeling right now. Like, whether you guys are a fan of Disney stuff or not, I'm not sure. You can definitely tell me in the comments. And of course, at any time, if you do have any comments, please feel free. Like questions, comments, suggestions as far as materials, anything like that. I'm definitely interested in hearing. So, get to this collar. Just gently bending that around. And give it the implied form. We'll have a button somewhere around here. I believe they're supposed to be on the left. I believe it's supposed to be on the left. I forget if it's on the left or the right. I get backwards about that with like formal clothing and dressing, but that's alright. So we'll have this wrapping around. We're not doing any breeches for our bunny. And for the life of me, I can't figure out what to do with this other arm. Starting to do kind of a cutout for where the sleeve would be, so I'm going to jump over to doing more facial features for our bunny. I say bunny even though he's the white rabbit. So let's go ahead and get some details in here. So yeah, I don't know, it's just oddly stuck. Well, I shouldn't say oddly stuck. I've been stuck on a couple of the prompts here. You saw how long it took me to figure out that key. So my thing is to bounce around to what I'm feeling like rather than force the prompt. And normally after puttering around on something else, I'll get an idea which will start spurring me forward. And this stray line from when the neck was a little skinnier just didn't seem right. I know with the white rabbit being a white rabbit, I think I'm actually going to go with an albino rabbit. I'm going that way because I have the dormouse at the moment is still a white mouse. I haven't changed anything there, so for now the white rabbit will be an albino rabbit. And rabbits have these generally friendly looking eyes. It's very round shapes. Something that I don't have a whole lot of familiarity with is rendering fur in watercolor painting. I find it easier to do with pencil, so I probably will do some accents with some pencil if I don't feel like I'm quite where I want to be. And that's also the case with once I have the background in, I'll probably use some pencil to help indicate furriness to contrast with the background. So it's not an easy spot to be in, just with having the ambiguity going on here. You know what? That is in the wrong spot. I started doing this arm cuff a little bit too far back. And so sewing wise, you'd have a seam to indicate the difference between front and back. That would also generally be shoulder. Trying to slide some positions to different places where they don't really belong. I think what I did is I did this collar too high, and that's why everything else is looking a little bit wrong. Yeah, you guys get to hear me rambling about dressing bunnies. Alright, so this would be about trying to do a seam line. I actually do a little bit of sewing, so it's kind of a... That's why all of this winds up being like, okay, I need to fix this. This is not realistic. If I were sewing this, how would it look? There we go, that looks a bit better. A little muddy here, but I can go ahead and lift that up a little bit. And then we gotta figure out this arm. I like the frog footman, since I went pretty strong with the tennial styling of illustration. He's a lot more anthropomorphized, and I think that was probably to go ahead and keep his sanity, honestly. We're gonna skip ahead. Yeah, I should leave this soundtrack. There's a couple where it's like really pushing like Mars attacks almost, and the soundtrack is like, this is not what I feel like at all. Yeah, I think I might just to move on to something else. Here we go, we have one playlist called Enchantment Fairy Dust. Starting with Flight of the Pixies, so... Might be a little bit more towards the ethereal side than I expect, but I think I'll go with it. Hey! I want to say a special hello out to Rowdy Robbie here, live on the stream commenting. It's nice to see ya. Alright, and back to our bunny here. Hopefully I haven't bored you to death with talking about dressing a bunny. Alright, so let's see, we need a chain for our pocket watch. Probably hang down pretty loosely like this. And then back up to the pocket. And other arm. I think we're going to, quote unquote, bend his arm a little bit, just laying here. Just casual. A friend of mine was just telling me about what's his name? I think it was Blizzard is hiring for like creature designers, and like, too bad I'm not a little further in school for game art, because that might be interesting. I feel like that paw is too short. I hate that arm. I don't want to spend all of our time working on this arm, but I want it to be right. So, what I might do here, so we get on with it, because we're almost at the half-hour mark, I'm going to try one more time to redraw this arm to where I'm okay with it. And then if it's still not right, we're gonna just jump over to painting the keyhole and we will come back to this. Because the White Rabbit was yesterday's prompt anyway. I think part of it is that I'm just doing a straight paw instead of thinking of the how the arm bends. Cats and rabbits, man, have such weird anatomy. I feel like this should be turned a little bit. You wouldn't see the toes quite like that. Maybe they'd be here instead. Right now what that suffers from is a lack of dimension. The arm looks like it's flattened into the vest, and I'm hoping that's something that will be resolved once I add the contrast of the vest fabric. I hope so. So let's go ahead and add some color. I'm definitely going to knock back this chain line because I'm not going to be detailing every single little link because that chain is quite dainty. Alright, so for today, I haven't knocked back my pencil lines. It's really difficult to be painting such light colors when your pencil lines are so strong. This is going to be some pale pinks. I'll probably go into maybe some neutral tint for some shading on the fur. Or maybe sepia. Maybe. I want him to be shadowed but not look like he's dirty, so I may actually stick with the neutral tint. The neutral tint, having that kind of purpley cast to it, I think would be better. Yeah, I'm just about erasing his tail at this point. He said it is so fuzzy. I'm trying to think of what color I want to do this vest. Because he is kind of the in-between point, kind of a representative of the queen throughout the story. And I have so much graphite on this eraser, so just like I mentioned before, when your eraser gets too gunked up with graphite, it is handy to go ahead and just do a clean spot. If I were wearing jeans, I would use the jeans. Just go ahead and erase it and get a chunk of that off, because you don't want to just be smudging graphite everywhere, especially once you lay watercolor over it, because that tends to go ahead and just lock it down in place. Notice this eraser is a tiny bit touchy. If I put pressure on it, it likes to go ahead and flaps back down, and I don't want to just be rubbing the paper surface with the plastic edge of this, because once you burnish your paper, like putting any marks onto the paper, it affects how the watercolor washes sit on top. Alright, so our bunny is pretty pale now. And we can get to painting. I didn't think it would take me that long to go ahead and get him sketched out, but glad. I like how this is going. I think I'm going to wind up implying some type of path over here. We'll see. We're not there yet. Let's go ahead. And right now I'm looking for my regular number 8 round. Let's to go ahead and block in some of these background areas. Oh, actually I'm getting ahead of myself. I want to jump over to keyhole. Today's prompt is actually keyhole. Yesterday's was the white rabbit. I noticed I missed a spot here. Knocking this down. So inside the keyhole we have the glass table. I did a curtain as a swag. Probably add some fringe and implied molding, like some wainscoting type of thing. And go ahead and push some depth, because this area needs it. I didn't do the back legs of the table. I figured they would be right behind the others. Alright, clean off the brush. I'm just moving this wash forward. Ooh, and I have some green in here still. That's alright. That's not going to affect anything negatively. I was painting some leaves last night for another project. And apparently I have a bit of sap green still. So it's kind of neutral tint. It's kind of sap green. A little bit of both. I'm just going to change out the battery. And that train of thought was lost. Alright, and we're back. I was just looking at the battery yesterday when we ended off. I had like 2 bars. You can't tell that if it's like close to dropping off of 1 bar, so it's a weird guessing game. And I tend to be, I don't know if it's protective or paranoid, somewhere around there with my electronics, in that you know, I don't want to charge batteries more often than necessary. I worry about the quality of the battery life after a bit. Right, so since our key is very gold, we'll go with continuing that theme for our keyhole. So I'm grabbing the silver Sterling Studio 6000 S round. It's a number 1 brush. This has been our detail brush for a good chunk of this. It's not so skinny as to not be able to hold a decent bit of water and pigment, so that's why I like it. We're just going to go ahead and lay in a bit of red, and I'm thinking I'm going to grab the Quinacridone Red this time. Don't recall if that's what I grabbed last time or not. It's a somewhat transparent red. I'm just going to very gently go over our edges here. And we're gonna see if I can freehand a circle and not feel like I've messed the whole thing up. Yeah, I definitely have a stray stroke there. I feel like I'm doing worse than some on camera. That's alright. Well, I can fix it later. Alright, and down here doesn't feel cold, so that should be dry enough. And what's probably going to happen with our white rabbit is that I'm going to wind up tapping on details probably over the next prompt or two, just because we are already past the half-hour mark. And I want to get as much as I can done. Should go just a touch further. I should have tilted this sideways. Oh, I'm going to have to Photoshop that. And this edge, excuse me, it should taper a little bit better. Alright, got to mute for a moment so I can clear my throat. But yeah, this is all going a bit wonky, so I hope you'll stick around. For those of you getting to see me absolutely go wobbly on some of these lines. It's so weird working on camera sometimes still, because normally my head would probably be right here. You're zoomed in so much that you can't even see where my hands are. So like basically my head would be right here, maybe like 4 or 5 inches above the work if I weren't doing this on camera, but instead like I would have my head where the lens is, and I would definitely get smacked by the camera and you guys wouldn't see a thing, so bonkers. Alright, so we have our little bit of Quinacridone Red laid down for our general outline. Just grabbing a little bit more to mix up for our rabbit's pocket watch. And this will help us get a really vibrant gold effect. Very different from what we did with the hookah back here, because the caterpillar's hookah is brass, and again you're zoomed in to the point that you can't even see what I'm pointing at. But the hookah is very much a cooler tone. I might even go in with another blaze and push that further cool. And then random hair. Oh, my brush isn't shedding. So hop back over here with our rabbit. And what I'm doing is just ever so little bit of red. And then I'm just doing little dots of the red to help imply the gold tone for the chain. Actually, seeing how nice this Quinacridone Red is, and that it is pretty thin, I'm actually going to start working on some details for the eye. Knock that back a little bit further, and just doing an initial glaze. I'm not going to go into the ears, except for maybe some like subtle veining. And I tend to see with a lot of animals, you'll have more of a like a corally orangey tone. I don't want to just go in here with pink. I think a little bit around the nose. And this will just help give a little bit of life to the character. Later on I'll actually add the shadows and give that some depth. Alright. So I know that's probably some of the boring bits, is seeing glazes where you're not going to see a whole lot of the detail. So we'll move on to some more detailed parts. Going with sticking with the number 1 round, and I'm going pretty dark with some purely maroon. For one, this will correct the little bit of a mistake here on the end of the keyhole. Start popping in some nice deep shadows with our curtain here. I'm realizing I hadn't quite left a whole lot of room to do some fringe trim on the end of that curtain. That's gonna be alright. I can get to that later with some Hansa yellow, because it is a little bit opaque. And I'm picking up just a bit of the pigment here. We don't want that to puddle. I'm just doing a quick blot on the napkin so that doesn't puddle too much. And I'm trying to think what color our main hallway would be. And while I'm still debating that, grabbing a little bit of the phthalo blue turquoise, or phthalo turquoise blue. Again, I still have to look that up. But I want to start doing something to go ahead and imply glassy surface here. This will just be a really thin glaze. Really thin. Go back here, grabbing half that pigment. And now I gotta wonder, is this playlist still going or what? Getting a little sketchy with some of these lines. Hopefully my network's decided that it wants to keep going. Stuff is just getting quiet out of nowhere. And stuff is buffering. Awesome. Well, can't have everything. But anyways, this blue wash is not the be-all end-all. I'll also come back in, probably with some Payne's Gray, just to make sure that you get some really nice deep color. Because glass doesn't really look like glass until you've popped in some high contrast. It's one of those lessons that took a bit to sink in at one point in time for me. You know what, since we're over here, talking about glass, it's been bothering me that this glaze, when I went in to try to deepen this area, did not go in very dark. That's some of our phthalo green blue shade. And then I'm grabbing some phthalo green yellow shade. Do the same on this side, just to push that a bit darker. And then giving that a rinse. And blotting the brush pretty dry, so I can just grab the ends of that and make sure we don't have any hard edges. I don't want this to be a hard edge. You can see that phthalo green I just had on the other side dried down a little further than I wanted again. Might have to go in with a little bit of neutral tint to go ahead and darken that instead. I wanted to just glaze with a deeper color, but I'm not quite getting what I wanted. Work in progress. I know the playlist has stopped again. Just a really quick track. Is this the end of the playlist? Yes, it is. That's why I keep stopping. I picked the shortest playlist. So we'll start that over. Alright, and excuse me for just one moment while we're waiting for that to go ahead and dry. Thank you so much for your patience. It's one of those moments where it's like, I really gotta go, and I've been hydrating pretty well this morning. So, sorry. Try to have everything ready to go when I start streaming, but every once in a while, it doesn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. Great, so at this point, I'm going in with some Pyro Red. This is the same color that we used on the Queen's dress. Though on her case, I used, what's his name? Pyro Crimson to go ahead and add her shadows instead of the, purely maroon. Honestly, I love both colors, so it's one of those. It's kind of torn. And Pyro Crimson is nice when you want to go a little bit cooler for shadows. Purely maroon, I'd say it's a little bit more of a mid. It's still kind of on the cool side. It just depends on, I don't know, I guess how much depth you're really trying to push. I'm probably going to have to glaze this again. Get the depth that I'm wanting. The Pyro Red is a little bit more of a opaque color compared to some of the other pigments on this palette. So I'm kind of feeling out which pigment works best for me as far as reds. That was the main thing with this particular palette that I experienced some trouble with, is that the red that I initially picked out is not as light fast as I would like. And initially I was looking for like a 1-to-1 replacement because I only have so many pans, wells inside of the palette. And instead I've added dots of different colors all along the mixing wells. So it's kind of a crazy free-for-all of different reds and a couple other colors that I decided to add. Undersea Green is one of these. The other one I believe is Serpentine. And then I have my Quinacridone Rose from Daniel Smith is cooler. That one I'm going to remove, because between the M-gram version, which is warmer, and the Quinacridone Lilac, which is cooler, I can get to that color. I don't really see a need for both because of how I've leaned the palette. I also have Quinacridone Red, which is a nice translucent color. If I had to choose between these two, I don't know, kind of stuck in the middle. We also have some Pyro Scarlet, which is a nice orangey red, similar to Vermilion in some brands. It might even be the same pigment as Vermilion in some brands. That's going to need another glaze. I also need to go back in and add some highlights onto our glass table. I'm going back with the Quinacridone Red that we used for the keyhole. I want this to be very transparent in giving this a very lightly red tone. I'll go in later to go ahead and push the contrast with, like I said, paint gray or maybe even neutral tone. I really am trying to figure out what color I want this wainscoting to be. I had forgotten I wanted to do that curtain purple. I could glaze it with blue. I think instead I'm going to add a purpley tone to the background. I think I'm going to head kind of that direction with some Quinacridone Violet. I had a puddle of some Carbazole Violet, which is dioxazine violet in a lot of other brands, or Winsor Violet if you're a Winsor & Newton fan. But I want this to be pretty cool leaning. I'm just going to very carefully come up to the edge of where that molding should be. So I'm going to do the purple there instead. And still leaves this towards, I feel like, you know, it's basically like Wonderland's reception area. I'll also come back in here later and add some shading. We'll just do a quick glaze. I feel like my poor little white rabbit's going to not get so much love since I put all this detail in this keyhole. I am having a time working this puddle over here to get me a nice straight line. There we go. You guys will have to let me know if I need more conversation going when I'm trying to paint tiny areas. Now my last bit is, what color is this floor? Initially, I just threw in some neutral tint and just help me imply some depth for the space. The shadow would be growing as you enter into the area. This little section is drying faster than I'd like. So, adding a little bit more water to this area. And I'm painting over the whole thing because I don't want that to bloom. I want this to be a nice even wash as much as I can. This being a little bit darker will be okay. And I can fix that edge if I need to. I'm curious to know if there might be a preference for me to just not talk while painting and just have the music and the paint going. Really curious to know. Great. I'm probably hoping for that to be dry a little too soon. I'll start putting in just a touch of that contrast. I don't have a reference for this, I'm just pushing some general areas. help imply some form and some shadow. And this edge is still too light. A bit less pigment there. Same for here. Alright. And I forgot to grab just a touch. Alright, so we have some depth going on. I'm still a little meh on floor color. But we're gonna leave that alone for a moment. And slide back over to our white rabbit. So still using the number 1. Want to go ahead and pop in probably some red. And I just realized I didn't go over that with any of that trim. I'll get to it later. I'll wind up having to lay down some bleed-proof white, so I can go ahead and gently add in the that fringe. That's what happens when I get carried away. So I have this random puddle of yellow that's on my palette. There's some orange there, there's some Quin Gold there, there's some Nazi Yellow Medium there. A very goldeny, orangey kind of yellow. There's probably some Quinacridone Burnt Orange there too. It's just a random spot where I was mixing up some orangey tones over time, the past couple painting projects. And it's been working great. It's not so helpful if you guys are trying to mix along. And then I'll go back in and pop in highlights later here with the bleed-proof white. It's just one of those, when I'm working this teeny, I'm not trying to just preserve those highlights with masking fluid. It tends to get in the way of washes at this scale. It's just the surface tension of the paint. You're likely to wind up with like a really weird bubble, and you'll have puddling and drying, and try not to have edges if I can avoid them. So that's why for that. I'm kind of thinking for Her Majesty's hair, meaning rabbit in this case, for the white rabbit, I'm going to put him in some red. Go ahead and stick with the some Pyro Red for the vest. I think it's more red trim. And time check, we are at 3 o'clock already. That's problematic. So I'll go ahead and finish up with this detail. And I'm going to have to somehow make up some time We're just about done for today. I'll go ahead and pull up what our prompt is for tomorrow. I just realized I'm not following the details of the vest I drew in. There we go. Alright. Bending that collar down back where it belongs in the vest. I'll have to add some glazes to that later and get some more details on our white rabbit at another time. So for tomorrow, sorry about that, losing train of thought. Messages at the same time. So tomorrow is birthday, which is exciting, and followed by Cheshire Cat. So getting to some really fun characters coming up and elements, because I wanted to fill the tea party with a lot more. So you can see I widened up the table. It went from about here to there, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, I have a small boy who needs a diaper change, so we'll go ahead and leave off here. Thank you so much for joining me today, and definitely looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Keep painting.